The G9 Mark II is here. I've used it extensively for the last few weeks. I have not blooming slept, seriously. I've shot 2 weddings, I've had aerial shoots, I've had dog shoots, I've took it out for some street photography. I can answer all of your questions and show you exactly what this camera is all about. I'm going to split this review up into photo features and video features because it is a true hybrid camera in my opinion. I've got all the chapters below so you can find all the information you need. Let's get stuck in. So just how excited should you be right now? I think quite excited. The G9 Mark II is like if the GH6 and the S5 Mark II had a super cool baby. We've got all of the amazing video features of the GH6 and we have the form factor, the phase detect autofocus from the S5 Mark II. Also, let's get spicy right up front. I've tested all of these cameras a lot. I have to say the G9 Mark II has the best autofocus of all of them and also the best IBIS of all of them. And I have the test footage to back it up. So that's how excited you should be. There are tons of video features in the G9 Mark II. Here is just a quick fire round and then I'll go in more depth into some important features. We have Vlog built in at no extra cost. Unlimited recording times. ProRes. You can record ProRes internally or to an SSD. Yes, it has external SSD recording. 120p and 60p slow motion in 4K with no crop, just like the GH6. 5.8K open gate in 30p and 4.4K 60p open gate. Dual SD card recording and an audio input and a headphone input for monitoring. So let's have a good old-fashioned IBIS test. I have shot so much video footage on the G9 Mark II. I've tested it with gimbals and without. I've tried to do some handheld movements, tried to keep things static with longer lenses, and it has impressed me throughout. I'm literally just walking with the camera and it looks so smooth. Ooh, there was a step. If I end up in a bush,
I'll tell you before you're about to get to the edge of the cliff.
Thank you. The IBIS is rock solid and ridiculously impressive. Here are some shots that I've taken from recent shoots, all handheld. Also bear in mind that this is pre-production firmware, so in theory, it's only ever going to get better post-release. And I have a full comparison video coming soon between the OM1, which is really the main competitor in the Micro Four Thirds arena, so subscribe and stick around for that. With the gimbal, the G9 Mark II is delightful. And even just having slider-esque shots, like these B-roll shots even impressed me. Just pushing the camera along the table looks like it was on a slider. And if you've been on this channel recently, you will have seen how much I have adored the S5 Mark II autofocus. I've become a chronic product waver. I can't help myself. After so many years of manual focus, I have a camera that works with phase detect, and the G9 Mark II is even more impressive. Are you recording there, babes? G9 already activated that. This is the OM5, which is in cinema 4K, which is why it's a little bit of a weird ratio. The OM5 really isn't shabby, but it's good. This is better. So it works in a YouTube environment. We can hold things up to the camera and it will find them instantly and lock on and be smooth when it racks focus. But we do more with a camera than just YouTube stuff. What about the stuff that really matters? Have a look at the autofocus in this dog shoot that I did recently in a few different video modes. The tracking is superb. And that's down to the new AI tracking features. Now we have human and animal detect with eye and body, but we also have things like motorbike. There's a lot of really intelligent autofocus modes and they are not a gimmick. When I have the eye detect on, you can see a little box around the eye. And look at this shot with the dogs. I was shooting through the grass and usually a camera would hunt or think you might want to stay on the grass. This locked onto the eye autofocus and followed everything throughout. Also tracking people up the aisle the entire way. There was not even a hint of hunting. There was not sort of picking up people that are leaning into the aisle to take photos with the phone. It locked onto the subject and it worked brilliantly. As you can see, the autofocus is absolutely awesome. It's exceeded my expectations. I didn't think you could get much better than the S5 Mark II, yet here we are. I think if you regularly shoot animals or people or fast-moving subjects, the G9 Mark II isn't a contender, it's the one to beat. Low light video. The brand new 25 megapixel sensor has given us some low light enhancements, and we do have the dynamic range boost that you would find in the GH6 as well. Usually when I'm shooting weddings with my GH6, which is my weapon of choice, of an evening when things get low, I usually shoot at 30p and then I'll edit in 24, so it gives me the tiniest amount of slow motion, but it allows me to drop my shutter speed and let all the light in. I was shooting on the G9 Mark II at 60p with 1/100th of a second shutter, and I wasn't even using a particularly fast lens as well. It was my 2.8 stock lens, and I think the footage is lovely and clean and delightful. Do I think I could get cleaner footage with a full frame camera? Quite possibly, because science. I'm not here to deny that. But for a micro four thirds sensor and a micro four thirds camera, the low light footage I think is blooming gorgeous. Photography features. There's a lot to go through, so here are some quick fire bullet points. We have live composite mode built in. Yay! I have such a soft spot for that feature. We have a 100 megapixel high-res handheld mode for all of those pixel peeping needs. The intelligent autofocus modes also work brilliantly for photography, which I'll show you shortly. The biggest upgrades and the things I'm most interested in are the burst modes. Here we have a ridiculous 60 frames a second with continuous autofocus using the electronic shutter, or 10 frames a second using the mechanical shutter. This is crazy, particularly the 60 frames a second. It basically looks like video, and the tracking works brilliantly. Wildlife photographers, hold on to your hats. We now have pre-burst mode, which means you can shoot in 20 frames a second or 60 frames a second, and you hold down the shutter and then the camera will keep a loop of all the raw files going round as you wait for the action to happen. And then the moment the action happens, it'll save the last 1 second, 1.5 seconds, or the last half a second, depending on what you decide, automatically. I can't tell you how good this is for bird photography in particular. I've got hundreds of gigabytes of empty branches, blurred wings, beaks just out of frame, because there is so much anticipating and waiting and hoping when it comes to bird photography. Also spraying and praying, let's be honest. The pre-burst mode takes the guesswork out of it entirely. I think this is in particular a really good upgrade from the GH6, because the GH6 has your 60 frames burst mode. But my goodness, when you're waiting for a bird, you could accidentally hold the shutter down for 3 seconds, which isn't a long time at all. But that's 180 raw files that you've just sent to the camera, and you can't take another shot until that's all saved. So it's quite a dangerous mode, shooting 60 frames a second without an end point. You can fill up a card very, very quickly. So with the pre-burst mode, it means you're more likely to have a successful shot, and you don't fill up a memory card with empty branches and unnecessary raw files. For certain subjects, I think the 10 frames a second is even very impressive with the mechanical shutter. Look at these photos from a recent dog shoot that I did. Every frame is nailed, and you've got more than enough photos to get the one that you're after with 10 frames a second. You've got a really versatile selection of modes on this camera. And let's just have a pixel peep and see how many of those were in focus. Pretty much all of them. Honestly, when was the last time you managed to get every single shot in a burst mode completely in focus? I know for a fact that I certainly don't. But wait, there's more. I'm very excited about this one. Real-time LUT in a micro four thirds camera. I've wanted this for quite a while since it came out on the S5 Mark II. If you don't know, real-time LUT means you can import your LUTs and your favorite presets, perhaps from a favorite YouTuber that you know and like. And then when you're shooting out and about, it will bake those presets into your JPEGs. It's kind of like Fuji recipes, but like 10 times better because you have much more creative control. You can pre-install up to 10 LUTs on the camera, and I use the custom buttons. So I basically use like the C1, C2, C3 as different presets. So as I'm walking around, it's like, ooh, this one might look nice in black and white. Click. This one might look nice in colour. Click. It's such a fun experience. And if you shoot in RAW and JPEG, then you've got a backup so you can edit later if it doesn't work out. Here are some of my favourite shots recently, straight from camera, using my own custom presets as LUTs within the G9 Mark II. For sale at microphonenerds.com. So with this mode, I think the G9 Mark II is a very, very good street photography camera. You've got absolute bulletproof autofocus, you've got incredible burst modes, you've got the silent mode for if you want to be a little bit incognito, and you've got real-time LUT so that you could take the photos and share them instantly, already edited. And yes, it's a little bit more bulky than what I would usually like to carry in sort of an everyday carry, but if you put a smaller prime lens on here, it's certainly a lot smaller than the full frame counterparts. And yeah, real-time LUT does work for video, but I just think it's more interesting and exciting to think about it as a photography thing, but it does work for video. So some quick fire photography bullet points. We have all the usual time-lapse features and stop motion features. We have night mode, which is great for astrophotography to preserve your night vision. Silent mode for those sneaky little street photography or wedding moments, or if you're in a very echoey church. Like, silent mode saves my bacon in ceremonies sometimes, honestly. Dual SD, so you know that all your professional work will be backed up. And it's stupidly rugged, weather sealed, splash, dust and freeze resistant. So if you're thinking about landscape photography, ideal. Professional environments, ideal. The EVF is unchanged from the original G9, but it was a fantastic EVF to begin with. But we do have a boost in the LCD screen quality at the back. It seems to be brighter and punchier and have more pixels. But is there a flaw in this plan? Exhibit A. Exhibit B. There is absolutely no fans at all on the G9 Mark II. So while there is unlimited video recording, I don't know personally how much that means, because the GH6 needed a fan, the S5 Mark II needs a fan. Why doesn't the G9 Mark II need a fan? For my own peace of mind, because I would like to shift to G9 Mark IIs for my wedding business, and also it will be my primary YouTube video camera, so I can wave things at the camera until my heart's content. I want to do a little torture test. I want to do some unlimited recording tests in August. And if that doesn't stress test the camera enough, I'm gonna bring out the big guns. My microwavable teddy bear. So I'm gonna relay the cards and put the camera on USB power, and let's blooming see how long we can record in a hot environment. Welcome to the Great British Bake Off. The garden reached well over 30 degrees Celsius in direct sunlight. All cameras had the thermal limits set to high during this test. First test was 5.8K, and the G9 Mark II achieved 28 minutes before giving up. I then got this message on screen. I thought it would only be fair to test again and include the S5 Mark II X and also the GH6, both of which have fans, remember. This time the G9 Mark II managed just over 20 minutes in 5.8K, while the other two carried on regardless at 6K and 5.8K respectively. Meanwhile, the GH6 and the S5 Mark II X were chugging along just fine at well over an hour and 20 minutes, so I stopped them. I've shot midday outdoor ceremonies loads, in hotter weather than this, and they're truly unlimited, and they both have fans for this specific purpose. I've shot 2 weddings so far with the G9 Mark II, and for shorter clips throughout the day, and even an entire 45-minute indoor ceremony, it recorded perfectly fine without overheating. And yes, I did have backups running just in case. And indoors, just for a little bit of peace of mind, I relayed the cards at 4K 24p for over 3 hours until I got bored. Remember, this sunlight test is a stress test. It isn't typical, but I think it's important to test these things out. I would say if you regularly record in very hot conditions for long periods of time, the GH6 or the S series of cameras are much better suited to your needs. If you shoot shorter clips and don't generally film in the blistering sun, you will be absolutely fine with the G9 Mark II. So what do I think? I think Lumix have delivered basically everything I wanted and more. I made a video a number of months back called Dear Lumix. It was all very clickbaity, it was adorable. And here was my wish list. We want weather sealing and a mic input and stabilization, incredible stabilization. I think we could add a PDAF, really good autofocus, be the ultimate wildlife and sports setup. It would give the Olympus OM1 a run for its money. Now tell me I'm not the mystic Meg of the camera realms. The only thing I would want, and I'm being really cheeky now, is let's bring back these sorts of specs, maybe less video specs, I'm not greedy, in a smaller form factor. Having the real-time LUT as a photography-centric camera could give Fujifilm a run for its money. Street photography is massive right now. Come on, Lumix, make a smaller one. The GX9 Mark II. Yeah, that's my next Mystic Meg. You heard it here first. So aside from the form factor, which as far as it goes, I really do like. I do like the S5 line of cameras, and having something similar in Micro Four Thirds is awesome. I like smaller cameras, that's me. That's my bag. Aside from that, I am super duper happy. I cannot believe they haven't gate kept stuff. Like, having basically the same recording features as the GH6, except from like the very top end ones, which are very niche and more production orientated anyway. Having all of these features, just have it all. Just have it all. It's like Lumix have gone all in now on this Micro Four Thirds flagship. I think it's stunning. I just hope it's not too little too late and it catches everyone's attention as it should, because it truly is a very, very impressive camera. Oh, this is the new 100-400 Mark II. Don't mind me. I'm just going to Kenya in 5 days and I'm going to do a full review of it there on Safari. So look out for those videos in the coming weeks, as well as my companion videos, and they'll be linked here when they're live. Suppose I'd better peel off the sneaky tape, the logo hiding tape. Oh no, it's stuck. Okay, the secret's out now.